the logistics of artificial intelligence with today's very special guest, Mohannad Gomaa.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rolo Tribe. There is no faster way to kill a deal than walking up to a potential partner and hearing the words, "We've met before." Your brain cannot hold every face, every name, and every conversation detail, but Rolo Tribe can. Rolo Tribe is the first AI relationship manager that actually thinks like you do. It connects to your LinkedIn, your email, and your meeting transcripts to build a perfect memory of your entire network. Instead of digging through your inbox for 20 minutes before a call, the AI inside Rolo Tribe hands you a clear summary of exactly who the person is and what you discussed last time. You walk into every meeting fully prepared without spending an hour digging through your inbox. Stop losing opportunities to a bad memory. Go to rolotribe.com and start your free account today.
Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com. And Mohannad, I'm excited to have you here because we so often think about technology as living inside of the TV or inside of the internet. Like we think the cloud is in the sky, but it's actually, we're learning now that all sorts of things we learned the last few years that like computer chips matter, right? If there's a computer chip shortage, I remember 20 years ago when I was working for a computer company, the company that made almost all the LCD screens in the world was in a storm. And suddenly everyone had like nobody could make laptops for 3 or 4 months. And we suddenly realized how important certain little pieces of infrastructure are if there's a certain resource that every phone needs. So we're starting to, I think for the first time, appreciate supply chains once again, which is really important. And with artificial intelligence, it causes these effects and these carry-on effects with supply chains. I think it really matter. It affects water usage and there's computer chips and all these data centers being built. And then you build this data center and then 2 years later, the chips are obsolete. And so then you have to ship them off and sell them to someone else or sell the AI processing power at a lower rate. So there's these supply chain issues that are starting to really matter. And that's why I'm so excited to have you here today. So maybe you can start by just telling us big picture, why supply chain matters, and then we'll kind of dive into some specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. I appreciate you. I think supply chain matters because of everything that you just mentioned. It's a function of how you, first of all, strategize on the right strategy across your products and how you really translate that business strategy to supply chain strategy so that the supply chain can definitely align with what the business wants to do. And that reflects in examples like you mentioned in how much you stock, how reliable your suppliers should be, how close or far they should be. It's that resilience part, as one of those supply chain strategy that matters. But then it matters because everything that you do on the planning side is very critical on the demand side and on the supply side. On the demand side, to improve your forecast and be able to align the right demand signal to the company so that you can produce against it and align your supply chain strategy, be it manufacturing, be it inventory, be it procurement, be it distribution, logistics. All of these functions need to align to what you really want to sell. And that's definitely key.
For a long time, maybe the past 30 years, we've really focused on optimizing for speed and efficiency and minimizing cost, which is why you kind of want to have nothing in your warehouse, right? It's always like, I just want just enough for one day to arrive today. And while this was a really good strategy, we discovered, especially in 2020, that when there's any shock to the market or a delay, it can cause a cascade of problems. So actually these super efficient supply chain models are actually very vulnerable or very brittle to the tiniest change. Like if a port closes and they have to go to a different port and suddenly one thing's 4 hours late, well, then it cascades to everything else. So how are you seeing people change what they optimize for? Are we starting to see a little bit more stockpiling, a little bit more like flexibility built into supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. Absolutely. The flexibility now is very important. I think everybody, got caught in that COVID and was a lesson learned, but also a lot of constraints that popping right now is definitely changing the strategy. It's not about, just in time always. It's about how agile you are, how resilient you are, hence how smart you are. It's about how you have just right inventory in time is what's important, because your inventory is your working capital and very strategic. So how do you really optimize it for sure? But how you align to the right customer service, levels as well is very important. Some can go by it and do not really have to align to really restricted customer service levels, but some definitely cannot get into stock out scenarios where they would jeopardize a lot of sales and revenues coming in. So now it's all about how you really look at all those levers that control your inventory, about how you synchronize with manufacturing. How do you really plan ahead? So we always talk about the long-term planning, the mid-term planning, and the short-term planning, which always involve inventory for sure, manufacturing definitely. So how do you really factor in the right amount on the working inventory, or the WIP is very important, but also on the finished goods side, definitely. And this is, part of your question is how do you really set up the right service levels again so that you won't run into those stockouts, and how you distribute it as well is very important across your distribution channels. So different, strategies, different network designs for your distribution is going to really matter in terms of where you allocate your inventory to which market is becoming very important.
Yeah, my grandfather was a manufacturer of women's coats. And one of the big challenges, this is 40s, 50s, was you could run out of mediums and have too many larges. So even something so small as that can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Where you have to, so all of these little things that we kind of don't think about with manufacturing, and we think that AI can solve every problem, but if you optimize for the wrong thing, or you put in, if it has one bad piece of data, or one miscalculation about how things happen or how things interpreted. It could be something as simple as how sizes mean something different in Europe and America. The same numbers mean something different. In Asia, the numbers mean something different. A large is not a large in every country.
Yep.
These little things. What's really wild is like jeans are measured in inches, but like two jeans will both say 32 and they won't be the same size.
Sure.
So these little issues can really kind of magnify. And I think that one of the good uses of tools and artificial intelligence and research is kind of looking at, well, you can really look very good at the past, but we sometimes over-index the past. So like if you look at 20 years ago, wow, everyone wants Beanie Babies. Those are going to go up forever. And then it was like Funko Pops and now it's Labubus. But these things have a life cycle. And so one of the challenges is kind of guessing when the waves are going to go up and down. Are you seeing that predictive models are getting better as we have more artificial intelligence tools and have more data sets? Or are they still over-indexing the past and not kind of like, because the core problem with economic models is they assume everyone's a rational actor.
Right.
And like, that's not how anyone is. People buy stuff they shouldn't buy all the time. And like, that's why those models always have problems. So do we have the same issue with supply chain modeling?
Yeah. And again, this is actually a common, issue with, or a challenge for retailers is how do you you do that, assortment forecast on your shelves and what makes sense. Even in e-commerce, it's the same thing. So how do you allocate the right sizes in the right market or in the right store is definitely something that is always challenging. And that's why you see a lot of those, you mentioned AI and you mentioned a lot of, technology that helps with that visibility. And that's why now the point of sale information is becoming, our demand sensing is becoming very key in terms of really allocating or really aligning on what product mix should be in what market, on what store. So it's driven by, some of it is historical, but sometimes it's also the trend that goes into a specific market that really drives the allocation. And that's very important. It's, you see a lot of transfer costs as well happening as a result of missing those, particular forecasts or sales in different market that you have to shift to a different market, which is an added cost. And actually one of my clients had to deal with that a lot because of, misallocation of their products in specific stores, or the forecast stopped at the volume level and left it really to operation to say, where should that product go to which market, without really any intelligence in there. So I think the intelligence that comes either from AI or basically whatever demand sensing technology you have definitely helped understand where the trends are and where should you align or place your products in which market. And you've seen Zara do that. You see Amazon doing that every day. I mean, they're using a lot of algorithm to forecast before you even buy, based on, habits, based on different things that aligns with your profile. So sort of reduce that lead time to market or to customer. So there's a lot of, and now we're talking about, ultra same day delivery as well. That's going to even require a lot of different technologies or advanced technologies into that forecast algorithm so that you would place inventory in the right place. So there's a lot of evolution there for sure.
Yeah. As we change this expectation of delivery time, like I remember, and this will age myself, when you would order something and they would say it'll be there in 4 to 6 weeks. And that was and now if you told someone it'll be there in 1 to 14 days, right? The same 2-week window, people would go crazy. They don't have that patience anymore. And we went from expecting 3 to 5 days with Amazon and then 2 to 3 days and same day. I can't even imagine it. We're seeing these shifts in the market where now it used to be you would go to Amazon if you would wait for the deal, but if you want it now, you go to the mall. But now that Amazon has caught up with the immediacy because they're so good at load balancing and balancing between their different fulfillment centers. So how can smaller e-commerce brands or physical stores kind of compete with that when they just have this massive edge in the logistics area? Like their supply chain is so strong, their ability to even the smallest things, like if they're buying Dial soap, they might buy Dial soap from 50 different vendors because they're also factoring, well, what if one vendor gets sick, right? And they're not delivering that day. They don't want to have, so they're always thinking about these different layers to it that smaller companies can get hit by when they go, I have one supplier for each different item.
Yeah.
I would never have 3 suppliers for one item. They don't even think about that kind of that reseller or wholesaling aspect of working with multiple wholesalers. So how can smaller businesses, whether it's an e-commerce brand or a physical location, find efficiency and compete with these larger behemoths? Is there a way to use technology to kind of even the playing field at this stage?
I mean, you can always use technology to really bring in data from your point of sales or from your customer or align to their forecast, just like anybody does if your customer is that sophisticated. But like we say, if you cannot, do it yourself, you buy it. And that's what small businesses are doing. They're outsourcing those kind of capabilities. And you see that a lot in those shared services that a lot of companies, whether they're 3PLs or 4PLs or even consulting firms now, they do shared services in terms of how they help give you that visibility and predictability of demand and be able to give you data that you can depend on to sell to the right markets. So always, there's a lot of small businesses that definitely depend on Amazon right now to sell their products direct to customer. And that's a model that a lot of them use. So whenever you don't have that capability, definitely you reach out to the right, ones that can do it for you. But if you're doing in-house, and I think that's just of your question, if, how you can help, how can, small companies procure the right technology or use the right technology to really align with their market and fast deliver. It's going to be a function of, again, how they prepare for the demand in advance and buy in advance is one. But then how can they really predict, again, where your market is and distribute it in the right place, set up the right distribution centers is one of the key things that you need to look at. And, in the supplier side, to your point, again, you start with the strategy. How do you build the right, strategy? Are you going to multi-source? Are you going to single source? Are you going to sole source? A lot of small businesses might find it challenging to procure the right suppliers in the beginning. And they might use one single source. But as they build the muscle to really explore and find different suppliers, they can definitely diversify their portfolio of suppliers to get them the right price, the right lead time agreements that they need from their suppliers, so that they can, develop a partnership that provide them competitive advantage in the market. And, a lot of the power, even if you're a small company, the power that you get is from your partners. How good your partners are, how fast are they able to respond, how much they can flex. Of course, leveraging their technology as well is definitely important in terms of how do they really, respond fast to those orders and how they deliver those orders.
Yeah, I think there's something critical about adaptability that we kind of overlook sometimes, because sometimes a business's first idea is just wins. It knocks it out of the park, right? And then when something goes bad, they can't handle it because they've never had to adapt to it. And there's an interesting trend right now that is a little bit of a supply chain issue, and it's that the younger generation drinks a lot less alcohol. And so a lot of restaurants are now complaining because that's kind of how they drive the majority of their revenue, right? Sure, the food is there, but there's such a markup on alcohol. Sometimes it's 1,000%, like it's so massive. Same for nightclubs. And it's like, well, they have to figure out something to put in that section to fill in the gap, right? Because the first thought is just raise the food prices. And it's like, well, you can only push that so far. They're all trying that, right? So from a supply chain perspective, what do you think is like something they should do? Like because what they're kind of thinking is like, maybe they'll start drinking. Like that's, I think some strategies is like, maybe it'll turn back around on its own. But if there's a generational shift and there's a culture shift, kind of like restaurants don't have smoking sections anymore. I mean, planes used to have a smoking section, right? So it's like, there's a change. And now that's why everyone vapes. And now I guess everyone like puts tobacco in their mouth, like the chewy tobacco or something different. So there's a shift. Do you think that how is the market can handle a shift like this as an example, as someone who's like, well, I need to change my suppliers because I need to change what's here because I need to adapt? How much of it is it like, well, I'm stuck because I have an alcohol contract for the next year? Like, what is it like for a smaller business in that type of situation?
That's a very interesting and unique situation for sure. Yeah. And, aside from, the drinking part or not, I mean, it's definitely, there's always going to be shift in customer behavior, right? Or preference, right? So this is more of a situation where how you really diversify your portfolio of products and services for sure. And, what depending on the flavor, I mean, it's no surprise that, beer, for example, has definitely been a market that has been squeezed in terms of margin and sales, with the exception of, craft beer. I know that because I had a couple of clients in that industry, and definitely it's been a push system. So that entailed a lot of adjustment in terms of pricing and volumes. Now, from a store side, I mean, I think your question is more about, from a restaurant or a bar, standpoint, how do they shift that? That would be interesting as a supply chain, situation where you will have to definitely shape demand. And, demand shaping, technical term that is all about how you really drive promotions, how you drive, the right mix of seasonality of, your beverages or services. And you see that a lot now here. It's, it's a matter of, what, you don't have to hold the 10 different beer tabs. You are always going to make sure that you select the ones that actually sells the most. It's not about variety. Maybe it's about focusing on, or maybe it is about variety. It depends, but it's always about how you drive the right mix of your products and services to grow demand. It's one thing. And, the demand variability of restaurants is always, or bars is always interesting, and it's seasonal, right? So how do you adjust and stock the right products in the right time is one of the key things, so that restaurants also don't have to hold a lot of inventory. So they find opportunities to also optimize on their working capital and take that money and invest it in other facets within their business, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of think about how 20, 30 years ago, every bookstore started turning into a restaurant. They added a cafe, and the cafe was taking up more and more foot space. And I wonder if restaurants are all going to turn back into bookstores or something else.
That'll be interesting. Yeah. You see that model, actually. I think a couple of them do that now.
Yeah, it's like, I've seen this thing now where there's like barcade, like an arcade with alcohol in it. Like they're trying a lot of these mixing of ideas. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting part of innovation. It's like, well, there's an asset, all these old vending machines or all these old arcade machines.
Yep.
we can mix that and create a new experience, a nostalgic experience. I know there's something huge going on with bowling right now, where there's like a big market shift there because everyone hated AMC and then they got bought by someone else and now everyone hits a new company. I was reading about that today. These are the types of things I read about.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in these market shifts. Where do you kind of see the future is? I know there's a lot of talk right now about nearshoring and onshoring, which is like starting to bring manufacturing back to America, starting to bring more warehouse to America, simply because having seen a couple of different market shocks the past few years, which is like, well, what happens if there's a tariff war between two countries, which used to be so common, right? 200 years ago, it was countries would tariff war each other all the time. And you would try to have everything manufactured internally. And then we try to shift everything to Asia, first China, now India. And now we're starting to bring it back. I've even seen work with companies that do nearshoring, even for tech support or even for phone teams. Especially now with AI, you can accelerate and actually get a better price from one person running 10 AIs in America versus 10 people in another country. So the pricing has kind of changed. And do you think we'll see a shift in manufacturing? And just because it doesn't have to travel as far, it kind of, we're starting to see some advantages to actually building back in America again?
Absolutely. I think it already started. I mean, whether it's nearshoring or friendshoring, we're seeing a lot of that happening right now. And it can happen. It's just a function of time and your capabilities for sure. Of course, there's a lot of automation, so it's a function of definitely skill set, no doubt. But automation is also driving manufacturing right now. And the cost, there are specific costs within manufacturing that might not make it as cost effective as it is offshore. Electricity is one of them, for example, and depends on the industry and how much they use of that. It's definitely a factor. So I think, manufacturers looking at their, or company is looking at their manufacturing footprint right now. Should, we continue to use CMOs? Are we using the right CMOs or contract manufacturing organizations, or should we do it ourselves? Apple, recently announced their, manufacturing facility for glass recently. And it shows you, with the volumes that they're doing and with the type of technology that they're doing, they definitely can make it happen. And it's not just a function. It is, if we're talking just about the factories, that's not a problem. I think the most important elements out of this is your supply chain. So are your suppliers going to follow? Are your suppliers able to provide you with those raw materials at the right time? Is it still going to be cost efficient to do that versus, if they're set up somewhere else and they have to incur even higher cost on moving the raw materials to country? That's a factor, but that definitely they're going to be looking to consider. With tariffs and everything, it's going to be interesting as well, right? In terms of how much is that going to cost them to bring those raw materials. There's definitely a lot of, free zone talking right now that would definitely help a lot of those manufacturing bring in those raw materials with no tariffs. So that definitely can be a factor. And in general, when you think about manufacturing, or when I think about manufacturing, it's just not the, inside the four walls type of, setup that is an issue. It's your supply chain in general, your distributors as well. Mind you, you're definitely thinking about the market here, but we still ship, most of our iPhones or other products or Nikes or whatever international. So it's a function of what it makes sense to align to which market or manufacturing that's also going to play, a big role in that and those kind of decisions.
I think I've always been interested in it. I think it was a Tom Clancy book like 30 years ago where there was a car accident caused by a Japanese car. And we suddenly said, we're going to inspect every car really big time. And it slowed down the entire supply chain. It caused like a massive trade war. And it was like, we'll just inspect the way you inspect. And it can be something that small that you don't realize actually changes everything, because we spend like 1 minute inspecting Japanese cars, or they spend 4 hours inspecting ours. So if we switch to 4 hours, now it's like, that's a 100x decrease in revenue for them, and it makes a huge difference. It could be all these little things. The one thing that is that there's always going to be a surprise. You just don't know what the surprise is going to be. So that's why this thing that I think is important, because we're forgetting that supply chains are important, and we're forgetting that the artificial intelligence exists in the real world. And you talked about electricity costs, which is a huge topic for me. So I think this is really important. And I think it's really exciting. People who want to know more about supply chains, I know you're teaching at a university, which is so exciting. Where can people kind of see more of what you're doing and kind of learn more about the type of companies that you help? And maybe even if they need your help, they can reach out to you.
Absolutely. I always, I mean, this is my job, right? I'm definitely working with, from private equity to corporate on terms of how I can help find those, opportunities to, improve the supply chain first. But as you can imagine, my work has taught me to, because I work with private equity mainly, is to really how to align that with their cash to cash cycle time, with their value creation thesis. This is definitely one of the things that I enjoy, is how to find those opportunities and be able to focus on where the value is and bring that value across the value chain.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure to put your LinkedIn profile and your website and all your information in the show notes and below the video for everyone who's watching this. Thank you so much for being here today, Mohannad, for an amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for reaching out. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way you think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials.